Looks like we're having some audio issues. Hold on one second. Okay, great. Now it sounds like we are working. Great. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, everybody, to Live at 5. It is our season preview for 2021. My name is Adam Belcuore. I am the managing producer here at the Goodman Theater. I am thrilled to be here to share some of what's coming up in the coming year. Since March, I'm sure many of you realize we've been put into an unexpected intermission. But now it's time for our next act. We have an exciting lineup of 8 plays that offers the variety and the quality that you've come to expect from the Goodman. And before that, as we take care of ourselves and our community and wait for our return to the theater, we're going to make some adjustments to this fall and expand our virtual programming. This Live at 5 program will continue every other week. We'll bring you exciting new opportunities as the months continue. We're also going to move our artist encounters online, featuring members of our artistic collective in conversation with artists that inspire them, and potentially other community members that may be able to engage in really exciting conversations about our art and our world. There's also some exciting projects in the works that may be pulled from our archives, namely some productions that may be able to be streamed. We're going to provide more information on that in the coming months, so stay tuned. For tonight's preview, we have assembled an accomplished and varied group of artists to share their thoughts on what's exciting about this slate of plays. And so let's jump in and see what's ahead of us. Take a look. Let's jump into the first show in our Albert Theater, Schoolgirls, or the African Mean Girls play by Jocelyn Bio, directed by Lillian Brown. I'm happy to be joined by Tiffany Renee Johnson, a Chicago actor who has worked across the city on both stage and screen. This is her Goodman debut as Mercy in the cast of Schoolgirls, and she's here to talk with us about the show. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for doing it, for being here and sharing some of your thoughts about the play. You know, it was mid-March, and we were just a few days away from the opening night, and I had to come down to the green room and have that really unfortunate, sad conversation that we had to postpone or halt the show.
Yeah.
We put together a capture the next day and was able to capture the show. And then it was streamed. Over 4,000 people watched it in more than 25 countries.
Yeah.
Great success. But I'm excited that we're going to get to bring it back to the theater. It's going to be the first offering that audiences get to see. So tell us about Schoolgirls. The title seems to sort of tell us quite a bit. Is it accurate? Is it what we might expect?
Yeah, I think the title tells you a nice amount, but there's so much in there. It is very much about a group of schoolgirls in the mountains of Abri, Ghana, and it's a show about what it means to be friends. It's a show about like what happens when you are faced with your own issues, and bullying is at play. It's a show on the backdrop of colorism. But I think the heart of the play is just it's what it means to be a young Black girl, a young Ghanaian girl trying to figure out life and navigate teenagedom, and learning what loyalty is, and the interesting and rather funny part about our show is that it is very much about these girls who are interested in participating in this pageant to win Miss Ghana. And at the center of our story is Paulina Sarpong, who is most fit to compete in this pageant and most passionate about it, though I think the other four girls have interest too. But Paulina is definitely a standout, and she is the leader of the pack. She is the queen bee, and what she says goes. That also creates some friction because you have other girls there who are trying to find their own footing, but also know that Paulina is leading it, and we have to adhere to what she says, or else,
Yeah.
And the story kind of gets shaken up when a new person arrives. And
who is this new person?
This is Erica Boafo, who challenges all kinds of things within Paulina. She starts to steal focus, and Paulina is not happy about that at all. And Erica starts to introduce the conversation of colorism in our story. She's a kind soul, but also a representation, I think, of our beauty standards, our inherent beauty standards, and what that does to all of us, what those beauty standards do to the people who embody them and to the people who envy them, and the kinds of lies I think that beauty standards tell us. But yeah, it's really interesting seeing Erica enter the story and how all the girls react to Erica, because she's new and different, and we're curious about her. And by we, I mean them. Actors. It's weird you kind of talk about yourself as yourself, right, character. But yeah, she shakes everything up and kind of just changes the trajectory of the story, and gives Paulina a run for her money for sure.
Because Paulina is would you call her the mean girl? You said she's the queen bee.
Yeah. I think she is. I think there's an element of that within all the girls, and I think that speaks to the humanity of people. We're not all good or all bad, none of us. But Paulina is definitely she definitely lays it on the most, for sure. But I also think she has an interesting story, and there's a place where that comes from.
Mm-hmm. And what about so you play a young girl, a high school age girl, and
yeah, my character's 16, so just a couple years younger than I am,
That's right. And there are also a couple of adults in the room. Mm-hmm. And would you say the adults behave well?
I believe that headmistress behaves pretty well. Eloise is not she's not well behaved, but she has some questionable tactics for sure. Eloise is hilarious, but also like I think that she deals with some of the same kinds of ideals, beauty standards that you know that other people in the play do, that a lot of us do, and we see how that manifests itself in her behavior.
It always struck me as some of the scars of those older adults, their experiences as children at that same school. You can sort of see Jocelyn weaving that in, that had a great impact on the trajectory of their lives.
Absolutely. And the brilliant thing about what Jocelyn has written is that it's so richly funny, that it carefully packages these very like real issues. You know what I mean? So you'd find yourself like laughing at, the things that Eloise says or some of the conflicts that some of the girls have. And then you stop and it's just like, oh, these are real things that they're facing, some really internalized like hate and trauma. That's the beauty of humor,
Yeah. You and the cast, as I said, we're just days away from opening, and audiences had already fallen in love with the show. We were getting great responses.
Yeah.
And I could see that in the cast, there was also a great love for the show. So what was so unique about this experience or this show for you?
I think that, first of all, that was very difficult for all of us, inevitable, but hard, and heartbreaking. I think that what we needed and what people needed to see is to see these Black girls just existing, it lets everybody know that we are human, just like everybody else. We have the same feelings and laughter and emotions, and we think about the things we like, the same kinds of things. There isn't this difference that I think people often think exists, and I think it's always important for Black people to be humanized on stage. We live in a time where I think it is of even more importance that Black people exist as human beings, fully drawn human beings, who deserve to live, who deserve to be treated as human. And I think the joy in this show really drives that home. You see these girls, and also there's one other thing. Like, we have these weird ideas of what Africa is and what it means to be African. And I think this show takes away some of those false ideas. It's a story about a boarding school in Ghana, and just like, these girls are not much different than everybody else. Yes, they're different culturally. They're rich. The culture is rich. The Ghanaian culture is rich, and that is important to note. But also, these people are just like everybody else. And it's important to see. It's important to see that joy exist in the way that it does in this show.
And the joy is definitely there. It's such a funny, moving and powerful little play. It's also, it's so quick. It's
very fast.
It's very fast.
It's fast. And it takes you through all kinds of things. It's a journey. It very quickly.
All of this waiting is going to make the delivery of it all that more satisfying.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to have you all back and see you in the theater. Thank you so much for sharing thoughts about it. We're looking forward to working with you in person.
Yes, and we'll all come back new people, because we are all changing, and we'll have something even more rich to bring. So I'm excited about that.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Next up, in the Owen Theater, Fanny by Cheryl L. West is going to be a world premiere. Joining me is our resident artistic associate and director of the project, Henry Godinez. Hey, Henry.
Hi, Adam. Hello, everyone.
This is Fanny is a co-commission and co-production with Seattle Repertory Theater, starring the great Chicago Ife Butler as Fanny Lou Hamer. It was developed and presented as a reading at our 2019 New Stages Festival. And it was, as I recall, the hit of the festival. People were on their feet. It was such a joy.
Well, it is, I like to describe it as, in a way, more of an event than it is actually a play, although it certainly is that, based on the life of the great Fannie Lou Hamer, who, if you watched much of the Democratic National Convention last week, you probably heard her referenced more than once by people. And it's no wonder, because, sadly, what Tiffany Renee was saying, about schoolgirls and the representation of Black girls and African Americans, being manifested on stage is so important today, maybe more important than ever. My goodness, Fannie was fighting the fight in the middle of the 1960s, early 1960s. So here we are, still fighting the fight. Yeah.
So Fannie Lou Hamer is obviously the title of the show, and Ife is playing her. So, it's a one-woman show.
It is. It's a solo piece, but there is a musical component. There's a three-person combo in the show as well, because it is, full of all these great spirituals and civil rights era songs that Fannie sings, and at times invites the audience to sing along with her. It's definitely grounded in that, wonderful African American tradition of call and response. It certainly is a big part of it. But yeah, there's some pretty amazing music, uplifting.
Yeah, as I was in the, sitting in New Stages, the reading of it that we did, which was, I think, the culmination of a week workshop, right? And so not a ton of rehearsal, but man, people were on their feet and singing. It was like part revival, part rally. And, the history of Fannie Lou Hamer that comes out through the show is also, horrifying, shocking, astounding in terms of what she went through.
Yeah, not surprisingly, she endured some horrible discrimination and physical abuse at the hands of the police in this small town in rural Mississippi where she lived. But she never stopped. A year after she was horribly beaten, when she and some of her colleagues were coming back from a voting rights registration drive in South Carolina, they were stopped at a little restaurant, gas station, to get something to eat in Mississippi. And the police came and took them all to jail, and she was horribly beaten there. And a year later, she spoke about that experience at the 1964 Democratic National Convention, tears welling up in her eyes, and it made a huge impact. Many people feel that it was one of the great catalysts for the following year when LBJ signed the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. So she was quite a human being.
Yeah. She's brought to life by Ife Butler, and I imagine quite a few in our audience are very familiar with Ife. But tell us a little bit about Ife. And
well, she's a force of nature, and actually Cheryl West wrote this piece for her. A couple of years ago, we were all collaborating on another piece of Cheryl's called "The Last Stop on Market Street," a beautiful little young audience musical.
Oh yeah, I read that book to my son.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, it's a great book, and I'll never forget one day in rehearsal early on, and Cheryl had this kind of little sparkle in her eye, and she said, "Ife, I have an idea. I'm writing something for you," and Faye was like, "Uh-oh." And that's what it was, and it could not be more timely. It's amazing, and we're so fortunate to have an incredible musician named Felton Offord, who is our musical director, and the guitar player. He plays a variety of different guitars and the harmonica. And is just, he responds a little bit. He's like the male voice in the show from time to time, but they're amazing. They're just remarkable. And Ife is really literally a force of nature, and had that audience just in the palm of her hands. That's what she felt that. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that strikes me about the show, and I know this is dear to both your and Cheryl's hearts, is how much of a call to action it is. Can you talk a little bit about her intentions there?
You bet. I think that Cheryl sort of set the beginning of the play the evening that Fannie Lou was speaking at the convention in 1964, when she herself was there to proclaim a call to action. And Fannie, we marvel at how, is Fannie actually in the past in this play, or is she in the present? Is she sort of straddling time? And what we're finding, and certainly through Ife's performance, you see this, it's incredibly moving, that it's almost like she has been yanked out of the 1960s to this very moment, a moment in our country's history, in our country, that is, sadly very reminiscent of those times. A lot of voter suppression, a lot of the same tactics, a lot of uprisings in the street. And it's a time where her voice is needed. And here she is. And she is here to tell us that the most precious right that we have as Americans is our right to vote. And when you're someone like Fannie Lou Hamer, or when you're an immigrant, I was naturalized as an American citizen when I was 18. And the coolest thing is that I got to vote that fall. And so I think when you are given the right to vote, you really appreciate it. And I think that Fannie Lou is back to tell us that, to challenge us, to vote the change that we want to see in the world around us.
Very timely, as we said, and very exciting, because what an entertaining show, what a moving show, powerful. I can't wait to have it in that Owen Theater again, in that same space where we saw it in new stages, filled to the rafters.
And it's a perfect place because you're surrounded, she's surrounded by audience on 3 levels, and Ife is like,
belting out those songs. Yeah. It's
wonderful because people jump up and people clap and people sing, and there are rounds. She has people singing on this side, that round, and people singing over here on that round, and so it is an experience. It's not your typical night in the theater. It is like being in the Black church. You're there to participate. You're there to raise your voice, and to be part of the experience. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. Well, counting the days.
Me too.
Henry, I think you should stick around, because next up in the Albert Theater, we have another co-production that you directed. So let's keep you nearby, and let's talk about American Mariachi.
Sounds great.
So American Mariachi by Jose Cruz Gonzalez was a co-production with Dallas Theater Center. This is Satya Chavez. Welcome, Satya.
Hi, it's so good to be here. Hi, Henry.
Hi, Satya.
Satya is an actor and musician based in Chicago, and obviously in the cast of American Mariachi. Maybe not obviously. She's in the cast of American Mariachi.
To me, it's obvious. Yeah.
In the role of Gabby. Much like Schoolgirls, American Mariachi was in previews in Dallas, at Dallas Theater Center.
Not quite. We didn't even make it there yet.
Oh, you weren't quite there. I thought that you had your first.
We made it to our final dress rehearsal.
Wow. So the shutdown happened after the final dress, and you were able to capture the show, correct?
Yes, because like like schoolgirls. We found out the night before. Similar experience. We were all down in the green room, and Michael Moriarty, Kevin Moriarty, sorry, that's the actor. Kevin came down with tears in his eyes and told us that the next day our final dress rehearsal would be our last night. We would be all going home the next day. So.
In the spirit of what I think so many theaters did at that time was rush and record, and get a capture of it and try to share that with the community. And I'm told that was a great success, but I'm thrilled that we get to bring the show to the stage. So Henry, why don't you start for us? Tell us what's the story of American Mariachi?
Well, it's the story of this young woman whose mother is suffering from dementia, and her father is a mariachi musician, and times are a little challenging. It's in the 1970s, and one day she discovers an old 45 and puts it on, she and her cousin, and they play it, and they witness her mother just completely come out and become lucid. And this particular song just like wakes her up. And then the father comes in, and a bit of an outrage, the record gets broken, and so this young woman decides she's going to start an all-female mariachi band and recreate that song in the hopes of helping her mother come back. And so she and her cousin go around recruiting young women in town, in churches, in beauty shops, in bakeries, wherever they can find young women that can sing and that can play. Well, they find young women that can sing, but none of them can play. So they all learn to play, which is not unlike the actresses in the show. We hired wonderful singers, but they all had to learn to play their instruments, and they do. All the women play the guitarrón, which is what Satya played, the guitar, that's the guitarrón, the bass, the vihuela, the guitar, the trumpet, the violin. And so Satya, though, was our ringer. She is our ringer. She really is.
She actually.
Yeah, she
plays.
Although I think the guitarrón she had to sort of learn a little bit, but her natural instruments, I think, are the guitars.
Yeah.
But as you'll see in a moment, she's an incredible musician.
Yeah.
So it's just a beautiful story about family, about love, about the things the anger that we harbor, the beauty of letting it go, of reconciliation, of friendship. And of women, it's about a group of women saying, yes, we can. And men were saying, no, you can't.
So Satya, tell us about your character, Gabby. How does she fit into the story?
Gabby, by the end of the story, I think maybe Gabby finally fits in, but she's probably the oddest ball of all of these girls that come together. Yeah. But she's the last member to join the band, and she's quirky, and she has a uncle who is the pastor at her local church, who tells her that she's going to go to hell if she does anything other than play music for the Lord. And so with all of that in the back of her mind, she decides to join this journey with Lucha, the main character. And because she already plays the electric bass, it made her a shoo-in to play the guitarrón in the mariachi band.
Now, so this is the third production of this play that you've done. Is that correct?
It is.
And always Gabby, or different roles?
No, actually, I've been originally hired to, I say originally because things change in the rehearsal process, but I've been cast as 3 different characters in this show. And I think that actually speaks to the diversity within this place, within this play, and within our culture. to have that many different women to play in the first place, let alone different Latina women, playing different instruments. It's just all very, very, very exciting. And so I've had the opportunity to dig into Izzy, who is a meek young woman who ends up playing the trumpet. So I spent some time learning that instrument. And then I have actually played Boley twice in this production, or not this one specifically, but twice in this show. And she's the tough activist who doesn't take no for an answer, and certainly does not let any man talk down to her. And she ends up playing the guitar, so that was an easy thing to step into. But Gabby's instrument might be the most challenging, and she's a blast.
Well, let's talk about the music, because I know you studied a little bit with one of the members of Sones de Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, Juan.
Juan.
Guitarron lessons, right?
Yeah.
But so talk about the music in the play. How does Jose weave music into would you call this a musical or play with music?
I would call it a play with music, in that the music itself doesn't necessarily advance the plot forward, but the sheer amount of music, I think, qualifies it to technically deserve the same budget of any musical, right? Like instead of having full dance numbers, we have full band numbers, where we have a full live professional mariachi band playing in union with the young women in the show. And yeah, I mean, it's thrilling. There's a ton of music. All of the music is it's traditional, it's cultural. If you've ever listened to mariachi music, you're gonna recognize songs like Sabor a Mi, La Madrugada, and like La Mañanitas, La Llorona, like really big popular songs, yeah.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about that. So there's a full mariachi band you said on stage alongside the women's mariachi band. Is that other mariachi band? Is that women? Is it men?
It's well, it is men, and we do have a character in the play who is a professional female mariachi, but the whole purpose of the mariachi is to be this loud musical presence, but also somewhat of an oppressive presence. A lot of the importance behind the story is that women in this time period weren't necessarily allowed to play mariachi. It was designated for men, and because of sexism, because of it being in the 70s, and so having this male mariachi to juxtapose that, it was like this constant presence of what the women needed to aspire to be, despite not having any of the privileges or any of the support to make it to that level. And then to see the women at the end of the show become just as virtuosic as these professional mariachis, it's next level. It's so exciting.
Yes. Sounds like a really fitting, wonderful ending. Everyone likes a happy ending. Come on.
Yeah, this will give you all of that. It's fun, it's energetic, it's definitely emotional, and we talk a lot about mental illness and mental illness within families, and the immense pressure that comes with having to take care of a relative who has Alzheimer's or dementia. But at the same time, then we're gonna laugh and sing and gritar and hoot and holler and make the most of it.
Yeah,
fantastic. So I believe your music director is also a female mariachi. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, she's like a famous female mariachi. Cynthia Reifler Flores is one of the first women to really break the mold and claim mariachi as something that is attainable for us as well. And she actually, I've seen this 3 times now. She's taught so many women how to play mariachi music, and she's the real deal. She'll sit you down and she'll make sure that your fingering on your guitar strums is the exact mariachi way, which is different, believe it or not, from playing the guitar. Who knew? Cynthia did. Cynthia knew.
Cynthia did. Well, Satya, I would love to hear, if you'd be willing, maybe share a little music with us. And Henry and I will jump backstage and maybe play a little something.
Yes, I got a little something. So Gabby actually plays the guitarrón in the show, which is this giant fretless bass guitar, and it's really exciting because you kind of have to just guess where to put your fingers on this bad boy. But eventually you find yourself plucking the right notes and making something happen. Woo! So that's exciting, but it's not really the instrument to play to accompany yourself singing. It's got it's a bass. It's a bass. It's meant to support. But I am gonna play this famous mariachi song for you all called La Madrugada.
Cuando te empecé a querer, un beso a la medianoche y el otro al amanecer. Era de madrugada cuando te empecé a querer, un beso a la medianoche y el otro al amanecer. Ay, la, 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 ay, la, 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 la. Era de madrugada cuando te empecé a querer. Ay, la, 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 ay, la, 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 la. Para seguirle los pasos a esa joven que hoy se va. Ay, ay, ay. Eso.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, you can't tell me that you just learned that. You played that one for a while, right? The guitar?
I had a little bit of experience playing guitar before this show. I have experience playing mariachi music now, so
Yeah.
yes.
Satya, Henry, thank you both so much for sharing thoughts about the work that's coming up. I'm excited that the show is finally going to be in front of an audience here in Chicago. Can't wait. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Satya.
Thank you, Henry.
Bye.
Bye.
So next, in the Owen, a major revival of Mary Zimmerman's The Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, adapted and directed by Ms. Zimmerman. Joining me is Mary's longtime collaborator and lighting designer of Notebooks, Mr. TJ Gerckens. Hey, TJ.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled you are. And you and Mary have worked together over the past 27 years.
It's 27, yeah. I think that's old.
Go ahead, sorry.
I think that makes me old.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But it's obviously a long collaboration, and you worked on many shows together. I mean, she has adapted at the Goodman over the past 25 years. She's our Manilow resident director, and she's been here a little 25 plus, but she's directed, I believe, 17 productions, and many are her own adaptations, such as Notebooks, such as Mirror of the Invisible World, Journey to the West, The Odyssey. And this one was at the beginning of both her and your careers, correct?
Yes. It was the first show that I worked on with her as a designer. I was fresh out of grad school. I had seen one piece she had done, the Baltimore Waltz, also at the Goodman in the studio. And it was an amazing honor, a thrill to be able to work with her on a show like this at a place like the Goodman.
It's so funny you bring up the Baltimore Waltz. We have an audio recording of that production that we recently shared with our community. So if you haven't heard that, it's really fun to go back and listen to that. You can find it on our website. But so this was the first, I could be wrong, but it was certainly the beginnings of her career as an adapter. And so it was a big deal for her and for you, right?
Of course. And, Mary really, as you kind of said, made her mark adapting these monumental works of world literature. When you look at the source material for this show, it's really based on Da Vinci's notebooks, which are often called the Codex. He did them in the late 1400s, early 1500s, and they were thousands of pages. And they were written in that backwards mirror handwriting he used. And they had pictures, and they had incredible schematics and philosophical questions and thoughts and shopping lists. And when she said she was adapting this monumental, somewhat formless thing into a piece of theater, it was an amazing challenge, and was so excited to see what she would do with it.
Wow. So it's not just like the story of Leonardo writing. It's actually his papers, his works, and she's composed them into one experience.
Yeah. If I were to think about it and try to explain it, it's as if she took this compendium, these thousands of pages of genius, of designs, of artwork, and everything, and put kind of her experience of them on the stage. And so it's kind of a loving, affectionate look at a real genius, and in my opinion, from another genius. Things that Mary has said is that as a child, she really wanted to have somebody invent a machine that could take her dreams and put them into real life so she could walk around them for a while. And that theater to her was this machine that she could create dreams in and walk around. And when I think back to Da Vinci, to me, it's sort of like a dream within a dream, where you're seeing one genius kind of walking around in the musings and dreams of another. And so it's this incredible collage, thought and images and music and art, and sometimes the banal. He had shopping lists in there. He occasionally had musings about things where he was pretty far off the mark on them. But there's always a sense of genius and inspiration. And Mary kind of condensed all of that into I think the word collage is the best word for it. So when you watch it, you almost have the experience of looking at the notebooks themselves and looking at them through a lens of an artist and a genius.
Yeah, his as you said, his interests were so varied. And certainly the term like painting, engineering, dreams. It's there's such a wide variety of things that he was interested in. And I mean, think of him as a scientist and an artist. Not many get those labels today.
Well, he was the true Renaissance man.
Yeah,
he was the original Renaissance man. And when I think about Mary's work as an adapter, you asked about, one of the things that always amazes me is how she'll take these huge works, the Odyssey. If I'm not mistaken, they coined the word epic to describe Homer. So she takes this whole giant voluminous work, and out of it, she picks these things that are what's important and what we need to think about and experience. And I feel like she does that in all of her adaptations. And this one is amazing because it was just this, again, it wasn't originally created to be a book. There were leaflets that were later bound together into this codex. Yet out of it, she creates this experience where you have stories of inspiration. If you were to ask me, what is it about to you, TJ? It's about inspiration. And in the play, we see Da Vinci have inspiration from childhood dreams of birds, things that are very dramatic and imagistic. And we also see him have inspiration from tossing colored stones out on a piece of paper and connecting dots that become paintings that would sell today for gazillions of dollars. And also the lure of the unknown and the idea of the inspiration that might lie somewhere you're a little afraid to go. And you're not sure if you go there, if it's going to be bad or scary, or whether it's going to reveal something really amazing and beautiful. And so one of the things I love about her adaptations is how she takes these just wide-ranging things and coalesces them into this handful of things that you experience and frankly touch you as a human.
Mm. You paint a great picture of Mary's work, and one of the things I've always noticed about her is that design is such an important element for her in her work, and it's somewhat specific, or I wouldn't say unique, but it has an aesthetic that feels to Mary specifically. And did that come about? Well, let's talk about Notebooks in terms of the design elements of this show. What does the world of design feel like here in this world she's created?
Well, Scott Bradley and Mary create this staging environment, which is sort of like an artist studio, Renaissance artist studio. And in it are all these filing cabinet drawers. And it's, once again, sort of like going inside somebody's dream or mind. And each one of those filing cabinets reveals different aspects of Da Vinci's mind or ideas. And the space is dominated by this large window with what I call the jungle gym of pieces that hangs down below it that the performers may walk on or climb on, and perhaps the bird image that inspires him at the beginning comes in through that. And it's this almost like large studio machine. And there's all sorts of parts and details. And if you look carefully, if assuming, we're going into the Owen, we originally did it in the original Goodman studio. I don't exactly know what our set's going to look like exactly, so I might be ahead of myself. But in the original, they had little name tags on the filing cabinets, and if you got up close, you would read them. And they would say things like Skittles. They might say things like the sun or a field of wheat. And there's always a sort of playfulness, I think, to her work and the world.
Absolutely.
To me, I don't know, speaks to the childish delight, experience and learning, and inspiration.
Yeah, and I can only imagine that the way you describe that set, it must be quite a canvas to light.
Yeah, it was both a challenge and a delight. And again, it was one of the first professional shows I lit out of grad school. And we revisited it once, I think it was 2003. And it was really interesting to go back and look at how, frankly, I as a younger person approached design. But it's a challenge because there's all sorts of things in the way that we embrace, and actors in interesting places. But it's just this amazing space. And Da Vinci talks about light a lot. He talks about light in the play. He talks about light in the notebooks themselves that the play is drawn from. And often things I'm doing with light really tie back intrinsically to everything they're saying and everything that Da Vinci's speaking of. So I feel like light and the environment and the words and the inspiration just kind of mesh themselves up.
I've only had the pleasure of seeing some of the archival video from the 1993 production, and I'm so excited to see it in person for the first time 27 years later myself personally. So thank you, TJ, for coming and sharing some thoughts. I'm excited to have you guys.
Great. It'll be great to revisit it at Goodman. So
yeah. Be well. Next up, we have Goodnight Oscar, a world premiere by Doug Wright, directed by Lee Silverman. Doug Wright is with us today. Doug earned the Pulitzer Prize and Tony Award for his play, I Am My Own Wife. He's also at the Goodman. We had the pleasure of working with him on War Paint not too many years ago. And it's really good to see you, Doug. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Adam. Thanks so much.
So this play, it is, just tell us, who was Oscar Levant?
Oscar Levant, some people will remember as playing the frequent piano-playing sidekick in a lot of MGM musicals. He was in The Bandwagon in that capacity and An American in Paris as well. But in truth, he was a remarkable concert pianist who was very close friends with the composer George Gershwin. And because Gershwin died so early in his career, at about 35 years of age, Oscar then started to play Gershwin's canon and became best known as the premier interpreter of Gershwin's work, somewhat at his own expense. He was a composer himself, but he always felt dwarfed by the master. And so ultimately, he landed in the career of a pundit. He was a frequent guest on late night television in the early days of talk shows. So Jack Parr had him on with some regularity, and Oscar was forever getting into trouble on the network for saying certain outrageous things.
So he in some ways evolved into a personality more than a musician?
He was a brilliant artist, and he did become a personality and a raconteur and a joke teller, and that weighed heavily on him. He felt like it was squandered potential, and yet it's what seemed to reward him most routinely in the course of his life.
So he's a character who clearly had some fame, and it was a known quantity at a time. I would say that he predates me in terms of I was not aware of him. So what drew you to Oscar Levant to create this play or want to share his story?
Well, I first encountered him when I was writing a screenplay for the estimable Mr. Spielberg about George Gershwin. Now, I'm somewhat flummoxed to admit that screenplay is still sitting on Mr. Spielberg's desk. You have not seen it at your local Cineplex, and there's no indication that you will anytime soon. But Oscar appeared briefly as a character in that piece. And so I first started to flirt with him then. And then, in truth, it was the actor Sean Hayes who reached out and said that Oscar had been a lifelong obsession and a role that he'd always wanted to play. And would I have any interest in writing more about Oscar? And at first, I remember thinking, well, Sean Hayes is a really gifted comic actor, but I know him as Jack, and Jack on Will and Grace is such a specific comic flavor. And I really can't see him as Oscar, who was this sort of gruff, caustic, misanthropic Eeyore type.
We're having a little bit of a lag. Maybe we'll get Doug back here in a moment. Well,
there we are. Now we're back.
Yeah.
But so Sean and I were talking about Oscar, and as Sean started to describe him, his whole body morphed, and he became slouchy and rumpled, and his diction changed. And right there at 44th Avenue and 44th Street and 10th Avenue, he literally transformed into Oscar Levant in front of my eyes. And we've subsequently done a couple readings of the play in preparation for our experience at the Goodman. And I have to say, I'm too close to the play, so I can't be objective. People may love it. They may think it's dreadful. I don't know. But I do know, and I can say with absolute confidence, that in Sean, they're going to see an incredibly unexpected and masterful performance, because he wears this man like a glove, and it's just spectacular to watch.
It is not dreadful, I guarantee you that. And it was such a pleasure. Sean came to be a part of our education luncheon. Such a generous act on his part to come and support our education programs, and he was such a delight and so funny and so smart. And I can't wait to see him transform like you describe. It's a very exciting prospect for us. And to have you back. And Lee Silverman, who has worked with us before, she directed Chinglish by David Henry Hwang. So it's going to be great to have her back as well.
Yeah, we've had I certainly have had wonderful experiences at the Goodman with, I and my own wife came there after its Broadway run, and then developing War Paint with the Goodman, and with those two estimable stars, Ms. Lapone and Ms. Eversole, was thrilling as well. So I can't wait to get back there.
Well, thanks, Doug. Thanks for sharing your time, and it's always great to hear you talk about your work. So best of luck with everything, and we will see you in 2021. Absolutely. My pleasure. Be well. Thanks. Next up, Our next play was commissioned by the Berkeley Repertory Theater and will be a world premiere co-production with Berkeley Rep, presented in the Owen Theater, The Ripple, the Wave That Carried Me Home by Christina Anderson. We have yet to assemble a creative team for this show, so I invited my friend Sydney Chatman to come and talk a little bit about the play. Sydney, you received the Goodman's Michael Maggio Directing Fellowship in 2019, and you were also the Associate Director for How to Catch Creation, which was another show that Christina wrote that we presented in 2019. And you also recently did our really excellent program online, Stateville Voices. Thank you for that. And thanks for coming to talk with us.
Hey, this is fun. Thank you so much, Adam. Hey, everybody. How's everyone? We're going to shake it up a little bit, get some little action going. I just want to say hello to my family, the CC Connection, because they're watching. Okay, now let's do the work.
You know, this play, you had, thank you for reading it and looking at it. I know that you were excited to read it and engage with it because of your affection for Christina and your experience on creation. But let's start with just the story. What's the play about? Whose story is it?
Yes. So Christina wrote a fantastic play. I think it's fantastic. So I don't want to be biased, but I love her writing. But the play centers Janice. Janice is a woman who's married with children. She lives in Ohio. She's a recruiter for a university in Ohio. And she has this past that she's been sort of hanging on. It's been hanging on with her. So we find out through the course of the play some really interesting stuff about her family. It's about swimming. It's about, I have notes. See, look, I come prepared. It's also about legacy and forgiveness. So I don't want to give too much, but I think that's a good place to stop in terms of what the story is really about. But it centers Janice. The best thing about this play is that Christina writes, she loves to write, or at least the plays that I've read so far, she likes to write with two different time periods in mind. So it's centering in the 1930s, and it's also centering in 1992, right around the time of the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. So giving you a little bit of spice. Can't give you all of it.
So she's got events happening in both times, and we're sort of jumping back and forth, right?
She writes this seamlessly writes the way, I love the way she writes, because in one moment Janice is talking to the audience, and the next moment she's in the 1930s with her parents. So I love the way she kind of weaves in the story. What else do I have on my notes? Let's see. I came prepared. You don't have to come prepared.
That's what I love about you. You're always prepared.
At heart. So
yeah. Well, so you've obviously you worked on creation with Nigel Smith, and that show also sort of used the past to inform a present, not necessarily the present we're in right at this moment, but a sort of starting point in her play, and then she sort of goes back to inform that moment in the future. And I feel like she's doing the same thing here. Did you feel like there's any other motifs or similarities or things that you're seeing pulling through Christina's work?
I think she deals with a lot of forgiveness in her plays. She writes a lot about forgiveness, a lot about restoring community, restorative justice. She also talks about legacy in her plays. So in this particular play, the characters are more connected because they're family members, whereas in the other play, they weren't necessarily connected, but somehow living in the space that they were in California. Well, it wasn't really California, right? It was just like a nondescript California town. They just kind of sort of came together in that way through writing. But in this particular case, the characters are much more connected. The characters, Janice is the lead, the main character, and then her mother and father come up as in present and in past, and then her aunt. So it's about four characters, but the way in which she writes is so beautiful. She's so poetic. Let me see. I have a quote here that I just thought was so amazing.
Yeah.
But she says, so she talks about water. And if anyone knows anything about African Americans' past, Black people's past, we were stolen from Africa, came to America. We had to pass through the Middle Passage, and that water is a thing for us. So as a person, I have never learned how to swim. Well, I tried to learn how to swim. And in the play, Janice learned how to swim from her mother. her mother Helen. So she says in the play, water is a complicated element. It heals, destroys, rescues, erases. It drowns. It saves. It holds memory. It washes away pain. Like, come on, Christina, come on. What? It's just so absolutely beautiful. And the way she used the water to talk about the family and then to bring up other things in the story is just like, I can't even. Okay, girl, come on.
I mean, take that title. What a wonderful, wonderful title. The ripple,
Yes.
the wave that carried me home.
Oh yeah, you're not ready. When I call her plays majestic epics because they're full stories. You're captured into the 1930s. You're in the 1992. You're hearing about the story underlining the story underlined with Rodney King and the writing and the not guilty verdict for those police officers. That feels very synonymous and very, very similar to what we're experiencing right now, right?
Yeah.
She's just, I can't even continue. I can't even tell you how I'm so excited to see whoever's getting this play. They're lucky because she is one of those writers who, for a director, it's just imaginative. You can just go as far as you can, as far as you want to go. There are no limitations. And she also takes the audience on that imaginative road as well. So
I want to go back to something that you just brought up, which the idea of the Rodney King and the resonating, it brings to mind the fact that I find this play, and with creation as well, not only is she using a chosen time, the 90s, and then jumping back to the 60s, I believe, but the way that she resonates with the now moment is very, very alive. And I know she wrote this play. This play was a commission, and I believe was completed well before our current moment. But talk to us a little bit about how you feel reading this play in this moment.
How do I? Well, it doesn't. It's unfortunate that we're in a situation where year after year after year we have Black people are going through the same things that have happened 20 years, 100 years, 400 years ago. So what I think is to her credit, I don't even, no one is aware of what's going to happen in the years, in front of them, but to know that she can still capture the sentiment and the energy and the emotion of the time period, and it still feels resonant today. There's one moment in the play where one of the characters is driving a car and she notices the police behind her. And even though that part of the play was written in 1992, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I know what that feels like, to hear one of my friends tell me the other day, he said, if I see a police behind me, I'm going to pull over to the side. And this is a decorated veteran of our country who said that he still feels this sense of fear and anxiety if a police officer is behind him. So those things that she's writing in the play are so important and so connected to where we are that it's like, I kind of call her clairvoyant in a way, like we all can experience, we're all experiencing these things. And the question is, when are things going to change, right? What's great about this play is that she gives us a moment to feel a sense of healing and restoration. And all of her plays have that restoration, that restorative justice in some type of way. So I highly recommend not missing this one when it comes to the season. I mean, watch all of them, get your subscriptions, but I recommend bringing folks with you because there's so many layered stories between the daughter and the father, the daughter and the mother. This is why I say the 1930s, because there's a moment in the play where she has to tell a story about some boys and friends of her father that wanted to swim in a pool that was segregated. And it made me think about Eugene Williams, the young teen who drowned in the water in Chicago during the 1919 riots. And then it made me think of Cullen Jones, Olympic swimmer, and Simone Manuel, Olympic swimmers, and how there was a time when we could not even get into the water, that it was, segregated. We were not allowed to. And now we're here in a place where we're in a space where we can, we're Olympic swimmers, that we are medaled swimmers as a result of that. So that's why I say you have to I can't wait to see how this all unfolds. But, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to read it, because now
I'm so glad you responded so well to it,
yes.
that you love it as much as we do, and that you're excited about it. We're going to have it in the Owen Theater in 2021. Dates, of course, to be determined as events unfold, but it will happen, and we're excited. I'll be excited to share that opening night with you.
Absolutely. I'll be there. Socially distanced, of course. Bye,
Thanks, Sydney. Great to see you. So up next in the Owen as well is the virtuosic Hershey Felder will be joining or coming to us with his A Paris Love Story, which is written and performed by him and directed by Trevor Hay. Hershey takes us on a personal journey as he explores the life and music of Claude Debussy. He uses, if you're not familiar with Hershey's work, he both embodies these composers as well as performs, because he is an excellent musician in the spirit of Oscar Levant, I suppose, and really shares his incredible musicianship and storytelling to bring you a really incredible evening in the theater. So we're excited to welcome Hershey for the first time at the Goodman and see him in the Owen in 2021. But finally, I want to turn to a very exciting project, The Outsiders, a world premiere musical in the Albert Theater, based on the novel by S.E. Hinton and the movie by Francis Ford Coppola. It's got a book by Adam Rapp, music by Justin Levine and the Jamestown Revival. It's directed by Liesl Tommy and choreographed by Lorin Latarro. Hi, Lorin.
Hello.
Thanks for coming to talk a little bit about this incredible, exciting new musical, world premiere musical. You've been a dancer. You danced with Martha Graham Company. You're a Broadway choreographer. You choreographed Waitress with one of our hometown favorites, Jessie Mueller. We love her. And now you're obviously working on this incredible piece with an exciting group of collaborators. Let's talk about some of the team here.
Yeah, so it's Liesl Tommy is directing, and she's just a brilliant woman, and she speaks so articulately about the show and about what we're trying to do here with the show. And Adam Rapp is such a prolific writer. Justin Levine is collaborating with Jamestown Revival, and if you don't know their music, check it out on iTunes. They are two brothers and an incredible band, incredible music.
What would you classify? Like what kind of music is it?
I'd say bluegrass rock, but really emotional. Is emo bluegrass a genre? I mean, really, really emotionally and story-driven lyrics. So every song is like a universe, and they're electric on stage also.
And let's go back to Justin Levine, who I imagine people may or may not know his name, but he's obviously he has been quite successful working on some Moulin Rouge, I believe, most recently.
Yes. I think what Justin does so beautifully, I mean, he's a composer in his own right. And he also is such a generous artist that what he does well is he works with other artists who are not like living in musical theater land, and helps collaborate with them with both orchestration and making sure that the songs really do start someplace and go someplace dramaturgically. So he's a really beautiful fit, and he's just so smart and calm and collaborative that it just makes the room great.
Yeah, and my spending a little time with them, he very much is a man of the theater, obviously, and with a lot of theater history under his belt, having worked as accompanist and music director for years. And Jamestown, this is their first musical, correct?
Yeah. But Justin is also a rock guy, so he doesn't like water down the music. It's still authentic and cool, and it doesn't turn into, something else,
Yeah.
So he's really great that way.
Well, I have to say, and it's something that, I was working on the casting for the show, and I heard, one of the songs, Stay Gold, actually, and it melted me every time I heard an actor sing that song. So the power of the music is just
it's glorious. Yeah. And it's sexy. Yeah, it's great. I should also say that Rick Sordelay and Rick Sordelay's son, Christian Sordelay, are collaborating on all the fight work. And we're really working closely together choreographically, sort of as a team, because the hope is that our choreography really, you don't know where whose work starts and whose work ends. So fighting and the dancing,
yeah.
They're two opposing ends that are the same on some level.
So well, let's talk a little bit more about the dancing in a moment too. But why don't we back up to just tell us about the Outsiders itself. Who are the Outsiders?
Well, I mean, you know the guys, right? We know Pony Boy and Johnny and Dallas and Daryl and Soda Pop and, you know, the Soches. So it's a story written by S.E. Hinton in 1967. And the author was a she, that's Susan Eloise. And she was 16 years old when she wrote the book, which became this huge sensation. And I mean, she was an outsider herself on some level. She said she's quoted as saying she really didn't want to write about girls who didn't get to do things. She wanted to write about boys who got to do things. And she really captured something that was going on there. So, you know, it's about class. It's about the rich versus the not rich, and class conflict and generational pain, and sort of the chains of, I guess, like the expectations of masculine identity and what that does. And I guess being an outsider herself, she can articulate that maybe in a way that the teenage boys couldn't. But she wrote about them in such an emotional way, and had these boys be really three-dimensionalized. You know, it's like the same kid who goes out fighting every night is going home and reading Gone with the Wind, dreaming of his dead mom, you know. And it's really poetic and simple. You know, it's simple. It's a 16-year-old girl's writing. She's brilliant, but there's none of this sort of, you know, Brooklyn intellectualism. It's like just the real deal.
And, you know, and of course, in the film version, produced some major stars years later. I mean, included, you know, Rob Lowe and Tom Cruise and Patrick Swayze, C. Thomas Howell. I mean, then, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Who was in that film? Which, you know,
Diane Lane, Leif Garrett, Matt Dillon, Rob Lowe, Ralph Macchio.
Oh, right, of course, Ralph Macchio. And so this makes sense to me, you know, because we talk about it being adapted from both the book, Hinton's book, as well as the film. And so we're making a musical version of it. This is obviously a new incarnation. What's unique or different? Where are we heading with it?
I mean, I think Liesl talks a lot about violence equaling a collective loss. In other words, we're hoping that in the movie, I think that you empathize with the greasers versus the Soches, right? If you don't know what the movie is or the book is, it's the upper class Soches, as we call them, with their bobby socks and their collared shirts, and the greasers who are coming from the wrong side of the tracks and, you know, grease their hair and do that thing. And what I think we're really going for here is to just make a statement about the idea that this whole system of classicism is a lose-lose for everybody. And, you know, we're playing around with ways we can really visualize that on stage and use it. But
And so I want to come back to what you were talking about earlier, which is sort of the physical life. Obviously, that's a major focus for you. But, you know, when we think about gangs and violence, et cetera, I think, and the word, you know, Broadway musical, we sort of immediately jump to West Side Story. Maybe is that fair? Not fair?
I mean, I think that West Side Story has sort of become the American musical sort of iconic piece about this. We're really approaching it in a different way. I mean, when we're fighting, we are. I will say that our fights look nothing like the fights in West Side Story. They're brutal, and when they're not brutal, they're poetic, and that's what we're going for. But we're not really interested in dancing the fights. But the same combustible energy that these boys have when they're fighting is really the same combustible energy that Diane Lane's character, Cherry, has when she crosses the line to go hang out with the greasers instead of her class of socias, because she is this sort of sexualized fantasy of what these boys might be like. It's just as combustible. So the dancing is infused with all of this tension, both in gender and in rage. So the rage can come out in any way. Sometimes it's in the form of a song, and it could be joyous rage, and sometimes it's murdering someone.
It's it's a really exciting new musical, and I've been able to peek at a little bit of the design in the works, and it really is going to be spectacular. And I can't really communicate enough the power of the music and what Liesl seems to be providing vision-wise, that this is a new Outsiders.
Yeah, Clint Ramos is doing the design, and it's really glorious and cinematic and modern.
And you not too long ago did a couple-week workshop, I believe, right? With mostly movement and dancing, is that right?
Movement and dancing. I mean, one of the things we were exploring, well, the rumble, the big rumble, and that takes so much time because fight choreography, alone takes so much time. And now you have Rick and Christian and I really collaborating and trying to make this thing, the scope of it larger than any one genre of choreography. And the other piece of it that we really worked on is the fire. How do we do that on stage? So I won't give it away, but I think we're coming up with some exciting and creative ways to see it on stage, so that we're not trying to replicate the movie, which it just doesn't work on stage, right?
Yeah, it's so exciting to me to be at this stage of a process, to the birth of a brand new musical, and to be able to work with you and be in that casting room was such a joy to see us try to find like these iconic roles, these stars, these young stars that I have no doubt will probably be Broadway stars, down the line. It's a really exciting project to be a part of, and I can't thank you enough for coming to work with us.
Thank you so much.
So thanks, Lorin. Good luck with everything. And that is the season we are looking forward to. And I want to thank all of our artists who shared their time with us tonight, and thank all of you for tuning in. And really a great big thank you to our sponsors, our season sponsors who help us in every way. We can't be more grateful for your support. All of us at the Goodman are deeply grateful to all of you for the support you've shown us in this time away. We're looking forward to 2021. It's going to be here before we know it, and we will have the opportunity to be together again. So please stay safe, stay healthy, and good night.